Can we use this pile of 3D printed parts to make a plaster mold to slip cast this form? Let's find out. This is a form I threw a few years ago, and I think it's a good test case for a slip casting mold. The thing that makes this hard is the neck here. I went ahead and drew this up and printed this out, and you can see that it kind of bellies out. There's a shoulder, and it necks back down, and then it flares back out. And right now, this does not work with shape cast. The problem is this neck here. This creates an undercut. There's no way we could pull this up or down out of plaster if we get stuck. Both the clay as well as the original 3D print that we're using. And that's where this pile comes in. So Shapecast has the bottom ring, an outer mold. This isn't the right one, but it gives you the idea. And then an inner mold. So we stack them together. And then when we have the other half, that winds up being cauda boards, and we can pour plaster. And if we did that, you can see where this neck becomes a problem. There's no way to pull it out. Conceptually, what we need to do is actually split the mold vertically so we can pull things off to the side. And that's what this pile of pieces is. I haven't made new Shapecast features for a while, and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I wanted to go ahead and tackle it. So the outer molds are easy. Those already come in halves and quarters, and I think for this one I want to go ahead and use a quarter because it's kind of the harder case. Some forms can be split in half, but if I get 4 working, then 2 is okay. And that's what this piece is here. So these are basically the same shape, only what I've done is I went ahead and quartered it. And so this is 1/4 of the mold. It has the added slip well, just like my normal Shapecast molds do. So you can see how this is a quarter. As soon as we split it though, we have a bunch of problems. We need to go ahead and attach pieces so we can build up the plaster walls. The other thing I've done is I've sliced off the foot, this here, and so I'm actually gonna have a 5-part mold. So there's one more piece hanging around here. This will be the bottom, the foot of the pot. And so this is actually the profile. So it's been scaled up to account for clay shrinkage. In my case 13%, and has the slip well added on so that we have a space to pour the slip into so when it draws down and the plaster starts absorbing the water, that way we don't get below the rim of the pot. This here will act like a normal Shapecast mold, it's just tiny. It's actually what this is here. So we'll have an inner piece and the outer pieces. Just like that. This doesn't need to be that many pieces. I had quarters on my brain, so I went ahead and printed things out in quarters. This is the hard part. So I have these flanges, just like on the outer molds, to be able to connect things. And so when I cut the piece for the inner mold, I added the same flanges. I don't think I'm going to keep these exactly like this, but I wanted to do a prototype to try them out. So most of these other pieces are basically connecting bits to made into these flanges. So these 2 pieces go on the outside just like this, and then they will create basically the wedges for the plaster. So the plaster will fill in here. Of course, we couldn't pour plaster into this, it would fall off the end. And a bottom ring segment, just like the normal Shapecast molds for the outer mold. And this here is starting to look like something we pour plaster. If you look at other multi-part mold systems, they basically have something like this. It's not made of many parts. I may be able to reduce the part count, but I wanted something that could be easily demolded. That's definitely one of the key pieces of Shapecast, is that we can not only pour the plaster in, but we can get the plaster out. And I already know I've done a bunch of changes. This right now is kind of hard to set down, but should be good enough to be able to pour plaster in. But I went ahead and made one more part. One of the nice things about Shapecast is not only the inner mold, but the outer mold's really nice to handle. Normally these are made with cauda boards or kind of put together in an ad hoc way, but with the Shapecast molds, these are 3D printed, so they're actually just really nice to handle. They give us a consistent thickness of the wall for plaster, so it has a better chance of absorbing the water at an equal rate. I don't know if that's a huge deal, but it's kind of nice, but it also cuts down on the amount of plaster we need, so it's just more efficient in that way. The molds wind up being lighter, and then yeah, they're just nice to handle. So most of the mold systems that are like this would basically have something that is this wedge shaped, and it would basically be filled up with plaster up to the top. I could extend these walls and flatten this off if I didn't want to. However, what I did is I went ahead and modeled this piece here, and it fits in this missing hole. So it goes in just like that. So this is very similar to a normal Shapecast mold. This is the outer mold, this is the outer mold. The trick is with the normal Shapecast mold, we pour from the foot going in, However, we have both ends contained here, because this is going to be a 5-part mold system. Potentially we could pour in from the slip well, but I didn't want to do that. So instead I laid it down and I cut this opening. And I already know this is too small, I will miss and plaster will go everywhere, but kind of conceptually this is what I'm thinking about. This is basically the first prototype I managed to get working, and so I went ahead and printed it out. I needed to make a bunch of refinements, so for instance right now there's no way to connect these edges here, so plaster will leak out, so I'm going to have to tape this up as well, just for the prototype. I firmly believe the best way to learn is by doing as opposed to just tweaking things infinitely. So this will be a good test, and with this I can get some insights into how this works and what I actually need to change versus what's okay. On this one I'm going to go ahead and put some more binder clips on as well, and I need to tape these seams right here. So let me do that first. There we go, that'll help the plaster from coming out. I'll probably get a little bit of leakage, because that part needs some more design work. All right, something like that. That is a little bit crazy right now. I think we can refine this, but should be good enough for a test. So Shapecast knows how much plaster I need to put into here, and likewise from that. So let me go get the numbers and we can mix up plaster and do a test pour. It's not a lot of plaster, so I'm sure there are a lot of bubbles from mixing. Let's see if we can reach down here too. I'll go ahead and let this cure, and we'll be back in 45 minutes or so to demold. And I get to clean up plaster. All right, we should be good to demold now. Definitely had some leakage, that's why I have ridges and grooves everywhere in the real Shapecast mold. So we'll need to add those. The end came off. Yeah, it just falls apart. That's great. It's definitely holding on a little bit. Not sure why. There we go. Surprisingly, we got some bubbles on the outside, and yeah, I was curious about that. I wasn't sure if it filled all the way to the top, so I probably want to extend that all the way to the end. And this piece should, yep, just come straight out. That looks really good. So we got nice crisp corners there. And I forgot my alcohol and water mixture out of the freezer, so I'm gonna have to let that refreeze to be able to pull this out, but it should be fine in the meantime. But that'll be the foot. And we have our wall. We'll go something like that. Then we have all four, it'll go around in a circle, and we can be able to slip cast it like a normal mold. Then when it's set and ready for demolding, we should be able to pull it off to the sides. I think the critical test was, can I get it to demold? And the answer is yes. There definitely are some improvements I need to make. I need to improve the filling on the outside. And this is still too many pieces, but the fact that it just fell apart when I took out the binder clips and basically demolded itself for the outside walls, that was really good. One of the reasons I have flat faces here is I'm anticipating wanting to lap this, basically to sand it very gently in this face too, so that we have nice tight seam lines. We may not need that, it may not survive in the final version, but for right now that's what I want to do. It's the next day and my alcohol is now back to freezer temperatures. So let's see if I can get this out. This one may be tricky because there's really not much space for it to contract with this ring right here. But we'll give it a try. Way too much. Oh, it came. Good. I was a bit worried about that, but this one has nice, good draft angles. Some people try and make very vertical walls with shape cast, and while it'll let you do it, it doesn't mean you can always get the plaster out. However, while I was waiting, I was thinking about this and doing some redesigns. So one, as I mentioned, this here is bad, so I want this channel to go all the way to the end so that we can fill it up. These bubbles here were from me mixing a little plaster, but the way this is oriented, it's good, they float. I don't see any bubbles on our important surface right here. This is the one that's the face of the pot. I realized my slip well in this orientation has 0 draft angle, so the 3D print is sliding directly along it. So I probably want to kick that up a little bit so that there's a draft angle from pulling. I also realized that I have an undercut. So these edges here, I went ahead and rounded over in the model. That's what these features are here, but they actually come up like that because this is 45 degrees, and so they're actually creating an undercut, so we can't pull straight off. So I need to go ahead and adjust that so that I can pull things out better. I think this bottom piece, I'm going to go ahead and make an option, so potentially you can have a 4-piece mold or a 3-piece mold, so just the pieces around the outside edge. That really depends upon your foot geometry. There's another option where this isn't a flat piece but winds up being a plug that's captured between the walls, so kind of in the center here. This is what Hammerless Ceramics does for his pieces, and I might try that as well. It gives some more flexibility in terms of the types of foot designs you can have. So this obviously can't have an undercut, otherwise it wouldn't pull out. So this is a bowl I again threw a few years ago, and it's got this very deep footwell in it. And I couldn't do that here because there's no way to have it come out. We have the same problem. The foot would basically need to be at the bottom, and right now the way the software is working, that wouldn't happen. The inside of the mold protrudes from the lowest point, and the software doesn't know how to handle that. One of my concerns is that this won't be perpendicular to the face of the pot. Yeah, so these wing pieces here, I think they're probably secured pretty well, but potentially they could rotate like this, and that would mess up joining between the different pieces. I'm tempted to go ahead and make it part of this base piece here, but it has some trade-offs. One, this part here prints on fine resolution settings, so it takes a while. Making it bigger would make it even slower. It's also just more surface area to try and release from the plaster as we're pulling away. And I don't know how the ridges and grooves would work for sealing things up. And then we just have too many parts as well. So being able to reduce the part count from 6 down to something more reasonable could be useful. I'm going to go ahead and flatten out the bottom too so it sits easier. One idea I had is to go ahead and do something more like my handles. So my handle molds basically have walls that kind of come in and out from the side. So they have the curve built into it, and then we slide it off from the side. Joe from Old Forge Creations has something similar. His pieces kind of slide on from the bottom and top to encompass the plaster and form the walls. So that's something else to consider in terms of reducing the part count. So now I have some decisions to make. Do I go ahead and do some quick changes to this to go ahead and cast the other 3 pieces so I can test out the mold? Or do I do some more significant redesign and try that out instead? I'm not sure yet. I guess we'll find out. As I started with, I think the best way to learn is by doing, and I knew this wouldn't quite work out exactly how I planned, but I didn't know how it wouldn't work out. So I think this was an informative test. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thanks.